This podcast is the sole property of Proud Sports. Our thoughts and opinions are our own.
Yeah. They say I walk like a king, talk like a king. You can act around now, say the same thing. They chasing the fame, they all want the name. But they ain't got what's running through these veins. Say I walk like a king, talk like a king. You can act around now, say the same thing. They chasing the fame, they all want the name. But they ain't got what's running through these veins. Make way for the king.
Proud Panthers podcast time. Steven here with you. And this is the home of everything High Point University basketball, a part of ProudSports.com. You can follow along with me on X at Stephen Beck PS, as well as this podcast at Proud Panthers. High Point gets a win on the road this weekend, 84-82, and remain undefeated in play for the Big South Conference, as well as continuing their win streak in the league. Really a battle-tested game, though. We're going to break that down, along with the latest update on Cam Fletcher, a part of the team, coming up in just a second.
High Point University, the premier life skills university, is ranked the #1 best-run college in America by the Princeton Review. Employers value HPU's real-world preparation. Students love unprecedented access to global leaders on High Point's inspiring campus. And parents appreciate HPU's God, family, and country values. Choose to be extraordinary at High Point University.
Wake up the Carolina way. Hi, this is Stephen Beck. Join me every Saturday morning for Waking Up Proud. We've got local eats, hot sport takes, and a whole lot of Triad and Carolina flavor. From barbecue debates to big game breakdowns, we've got your Saturday mornings covered. Wake up, chow down, and cheer on. Carolina mornings start here with Waking Up Proud. Saturday mornings, 9 to 11 on WSJS. The morning show that feels like home.
Back now on the Proud Panthers podcast, and High Point gets the victory this weekend on the road at Charleston Southern in overtime after it was a back and forth battle, one where actually our High Point team trailed by as many as 10 in the second half at one point in this game. But of course, going in, it was a game that I felt like would be played out this way. Very gritty, very much a battle. Final 84-82 in overtime. We outscored Charleston Southern 8-6 and just pulled it out. Actually, Charleston Southern had a look at the end at the final buzzer, one where honestly I'd have to question the clock operating there. Obviously, they're in Charleston, and they're kind of getting the favor of being a home setting for that. But I felt like, and it may have just been from where I was watching. I'll have to admit that during this whole game, I actually had something going on myself, beginning my stint, if you want to call it that, as a competitive gymnastics dad. Something completely new for me. My youngest daughter started gymnastics, and make a long story short, we had her in just something to do for fun. They saw her and were like, hey, you should try out. You should do this. Next thing I know, we're on a travel team. We're going to Asheville this last weekend. We've got meets all across the state and different parts of the country. And there we go. So during this game, I was watching from my phone. So that could have had something to do with it. But just from the way I saw it, that last second shot, I'd have to go back and check a review on that, because to me, it looked like time didn't start on the entry of the ball when the player actually received it. It kind of delayed and lagged, kind of that home cooking advantage there for the Bucks. But, this game is one that we knew going in would be tough. Saad Nimley has a team built around playing gritty, and they've actually been above where I feel like Charleston Southern has ever been when it comes to shooting the three ball. Now, in this game, I felt like we did a decent job defending that. Honestly, they only ended up shooting 38% from three. They tried 29 of those, but coming in, like I said, they've been a team that's been able to knock that shot down, paired with their gritty play, a very active team. And so on the road, it's always been a little bit of we'll say up and down type success level in a I hesitate to say dome, but that's what they call it. So I have to go with that term. But in their dome, there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not maybe they have some type of advantage a little bit there. They're playing in something that is smaller than most high school gyms nowadays. And when you're a team like High Point going down there and playing in such a space, I guess sight lines are always going to be a little bit of a question, or, you would think they would be. Now, fortunate enough during this time of our team, we go down a day early, so they're able to get some shots up the day before, and so I hope that little shoot around helps. But still, it's a fair question. Yeah, does the Buck Dome make it more difficult when it comes to shooting for the opposing team? And I'll tell you, it wasn't off-day shooting. It was. Our High Point team never really seemed to get into a great rhythm shooting-wise. Just battled it throughout the course of this game. And ultimately, coming out on the other side, that's something that I feel is an area of growth maybe. We've seen these games already this season, SIU and against App State. UAB was a bit of an off game as well, but I'll even leave that one out of this conversation. But if you just go back to SIU and App State, and now you lump in Charleston Southern, these games are all against a tough, active, gritty type opponent. These games were all difficult when it comes to offensive rhythm and shooting. They all actually had something in common, and that is free throws, which we're going to get to that and talk about that in just a second. But it's one of these games where it's a back and forth battle. We're being tested all the way up until the final buzzer. Where I say possible room for growth is, despite having those same characteristics, we found a way to win this time. Yes, it did take the extra period of overtime. Yes, there were opportunities to close in regulation. You'd like to see that those things did get done and handled then. But you also have to realize it is a win. It's in the win column. You count it as that, and you take that little bit of growth and hope that that's something to build off of. Like, hey, we've been here now 3 or 4 times. Can't keep coming up just a little short. We got to learn from that. Let's try to come up the victor. And so I was happy to see that did happen. Now, I alluded to it. It's a real thing. Free throws. For me, I don't know. It's a head scratcher. When I start looking at free throws, honestly, the only player that I felt I could count on from the stripe this year is Terry Anderson. Everybody else, I'd like to say Conrad, most cases. So if we just lump those two and say, okay, I feel pretty decent about them up at the charity stripe. Everybody else, I don't have a good answer. I really wanted to highlight Caden Miller in this game. Owen got 2 early fouls. Again, typical, crazy, no other way really to put it. Big South whistle in this game. Very tight. I felt like calls both ways were sometimes just, like unnecessary, but Big South officials, they got to be involved. They got to get in there and be a part of the game. And because of some of those early fouls, Caden and Yusuf were inserted into the game much quicker. And I really feel like Caden has these abilities and these talents to where if he continues to work, continues to polish those things, we're talking about a player that could be very good and very versatile in the future. Now, where I feel like he could really work and develop would be extending away from the basket. Right now, he's where he needs to be. Don't get me wrong. He's doing all the things I've been screaming for as a reserve player to an Owen or to a Terry or at the time to a Cam to come in and spell those guys. He's doing all of that now. He's rebounding. He's getting in there and he's hustling around trying to do his best on the defensive end. Now, when it comes to the offensive end, players are finding that, okay, if we throw it to him around the basket, he's converting. He's finding ways to turn that into points. And for Caden, if you missed it, he got 8 points in this game. And I all of that are things that I'm like, man, that's good. It's a freshman. Keep that in mind. Young guy, still trying to come to grips. And ultimately, if you really consider at the beginning of the season, I would have argued that Caden would have been a player most in the position to kind of watch, learn. You don't really put red shirts on players as much anymore. Now there is the 5th year, 6th year, 7th year, whatever years that players are able to get. Red shirting isn't as much of a thing. And ultimately, to what is the benefit of really truly red shirting a player unless we get into some type of contractual agreements with players in the future where contractually we can sign them to a multiple year type deal. Right now, it's like one and done. The next season they could be off playing somewhere else. So what really is the benefit of red shirting somebody? So, but just going back to that start, Caden for me would have been a player where could have used the time to sit behind some of these other vets, watch, learn, develop, and practice, get better and better. Now, that's not to also argue that if you're somebody like myself, I really am a hands-on learner. I do better if I see somebody else do it and then get in and try to do it myself. I've always been that way in the work sector. And so Caden, I would say we've received some of the same type of results as the season's gone on from him. It seems like the more he plays, the more time he gets in game, the more opportunities he's gotten, the more that he has at least seemed more comfortable. And so to give him a lot of credit in this game is where the main focus and my main significance of talking about him would be. However, where could he develop? Where could he get better? Let's go back to the free throws. He was 4 of 10, 40% from free throw. If he just hits 3 more of those, now we're talking about he's got 11. We're probably not in overtime. And that is saying that he's a 70% free throw shooter. I mean, if you wanted to say he was 100%, all of that goes up even further. But I'm not asking him necessarily even to be 100% free throw shooter. That'd be nice. I'm saying something more realistic. 40%, we can't have that. So to finish up on Caden, where he could improve, extended away from the basket. In this type of offensive system, and really the type that the college game has gone. I was watching Illinois and Iowa yesterday, and there wasn't a player on the floor between those two teams that wasn't able to step out beyond the three-point arc and shoot. All 10 players on the floor, 5 and 5 for both sides. It was a very much what a lot of people would have used to consider Euro-type game. A lot of guys big, a lot of guys, honestly, for Illinois from abroad, from I think they have a lot of Serbian players, and all these guys are able to step out, knock down long shots. Caden, where he could really become good and deadly is if he develops a jump shot, if he develops further away from the basket, and then also adds that to his abilities up close to the basket. Now we're cooking with some peanut oil there. I mean, that's something serious to think about. So that includes things from the free throw line for him. But 8 points, 5 rebounds, coming in, like I said, doing what we really need him to do right now, and what I've been screaming for. But back to that free throw line, it's not just Caden. Scotty Washington, 3 of 6. That's a 50% free throw shooter. We can't have that. Those are probably the main 2 from the game yesterday. In crunch time, I know Rob had a couple of free throws that we needed to hit, wouldn't have gone to overtime, and they were missed. He finished 6 of 8. The 2 that he missed in the crunch time were right there where we could have put it away, not had a chance to even go to overtime. So while there is growth, there's still a touch of concern when it comes to closing a game. Neck and neck, if you're playing a really good team and you miss your free throws, we already saw it. App State's going to beat you. We already saw it. We have the ball in hand. We're bouncing it. Can't close the game. SIU goes down. They're going to score, and they're going to win. You're playing a good team. You're in a tough battle. Well, let's just say when you're shooting isn't even faring the way that you'd like it to go. What's that going to come down to? Well, for me, it always comes back to defense, steals, being active, creating chaos on that end. But then when you get your chances on the offensive end and you're taking it to the basket, you're getting some of those quick whistles, you got to get points at the free throw line if you can't get them elsewhere. So the major talking points for just myself out of this would be how do we improve that? And from the coaching element of this, I've touched on this before. I'll say it again here now because it was the concern from this game. When you finish practice and every single player has to shoot a number of free throws and every single player has to make those free throws in a row. So I'm not sure what the number is up to. I think at the start of the season, it started at like 14 free throws in a row. It might be up to 18. It might be up to 19. I don't know. I don't know what it's up to at this point in practice. But at the end of every single practice, if you're a player on this team, you're forced to shoot, let's just say 14 free throws in a row and make them, or else you're sleeping in the gym. I mean, what else can you really do? They're practicing them. There's not much else there I could ask for. It just comes down to when it's game time, when the pressure's on, focus. I don't know. We really could use that, though, because as you just go through and add up the misses here, you would have a differential of, let's say, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16 points were left out there. We finished 60% from the free throw line and missed 16. 16 points. And honestly, Charleston Southern, looking at their percentage, it wasn't much better. So fortunate that way. The next game up, we got to talk about that a little bit as well because we won't have another Proud Panthers podcast prior to. And that is at Winthrop in Rock Hill. And right now, as you look at the Big South Conference, it's Winthrop High Point, number 1, number 2. Hello again, my old friend. You see, back in the day, my day and age, I hate to say back in the day, that makes me seem super old at this point. And I'd like to think I'm still in my prime, but during my time at High Point, the biggest rival we had was Winthrop. And at that point, we were still right on that verge, kind of coming out of the Greg Marshall days at Winthrop, where They were making the NCAA tournament pretty consistently. They were actually winning games in the NCAA tournament, became like a George Mason, like a even a Davidson during that same stretch of time, kind of a NCAA tournament darling where people would try to pick them for an upset in the early rounds. Well, here we are with Winthrop. And honestly, I have one main talking point out of this. Yes, it's on the road. Yes, you'd like to think that at this point we've had battles that have tested us. We've endured some of those. We've come up just a little bit short, as I aforementioned, on a couple of those. I'm not sure, other than maybe against Longwood. Those would be the two teams that primarily come to my mind. But aside from Longwood, I'm not sure that High Point has faced another team this year with a big man that has been as dominant as Logan Duncombe has been. I'm probably not the right person to ask on Duncombe. He's been at Winthrop, it feels like, for like 8 years now. This day and age in college basketball, even though he's only been there like 2 or 3 years in a row, it just seems like a long time. During his time, his game has really come a long way. And so when I say I'm probably not the best to ask, watching him from afar in just games where really they've played against High Point, maybe occasionally I'd try to catch a Winthrop game or a Big South game. I've always felt like he was just a touch soft. I've always felt like, man, he's got size. He's got some decent moves and abilities around the rim. But I always felt like when it comes down to actually grittiness and fighting it out and just being down in there, if you kind of push him and play physical with him, I think you can knock him off of his game. I'm not sure that's the case anymore this year. To credit him again where he's developed. And right now he is going to be a challenge for our team that when it comes to depth, we're going to have to rely upon and use every single piece that we have to offer to throw at him. Owen would be the first of that. I think Owen is a very solid defender to go up against Logan. But if you are accustomed, like I, and you should be, to a Big South whistle, even more so on the road whistle, it's bound to put us in a position where we can't just say, okay, Owen, Logan, you guys go at it and let's sit back and watch this matchup and enjoy. Because I think there's going to be times where and I hope not, I don't want to jinx it, but Owen is in some foul trouble. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we got to throw, again, Caden at him. We got to throw Yusuf at him. And there's times where I could also see how Terry would be the chosen one to go up against him, especially from the competitive standpoint. If I looked forward to High Point's schedule and I said, okay, where right now, a team that sits with 16 wins, undefeated in the Big South, where right now would be the stumbling block? I would say the best chance of that would be in Rock Hill on Wednesday evening. Get a 6:30 start that game. After that, we have USC Upstate. After that, at Radford will be very interesting on that Saturday. But beyond that, we start clearing out to having some of these tough away games and opponents that we've had, like a UNC Asheville and like the Winthrop we're about to have. And the Radford, when I just mentioned, we start to get some of these guys back at home. So we're really coming out of a tough way to start conference play. Big game Wednesday night. And like I said, back to our Stephen Beck time frame at High Point University, where Winthrop, High Point, they were the ones going toe-to-toe. And honestly, it hasn't completely gone away. Last Big South tournament, we all know, championship game, we come from 15 behind. if you want to say there's extra motivation for Prosser's team on Wednesday, I would also go there, because we have not seen them. They would go into the same camp that I already put a UAB into and an SIU into and an App State into earlier when we had discussions over those three. Super Bowl, if you remember that, Super Bowl here. Oh, these guys are the ones that beat us, Big South Tournament, final championship. We were up by 15. Now they're coming to play us. Super Bowl. In this game, Wednesday, we certainly, if we had him, could use Cameron Fletcher. And I spent the majority of the Proud Panthers podcast time, the last episode, breaking down my thoughts as to where we really were with Cam and the team dynamics. And so that's why I wanted to talk more X's and O's and ball this time. But the reality is that we're still in a similar stance as we were previous to the Charleston Southern game. Officially from the school, Cam is still on the available roster. He's still a student. And that's where we're at. Internal matter managed by the team. Those are the officials from High Point. Also, in doing some study of kind of how things have evolved when it comes to NIL, when it comes to compensating players in college now, I've learned a little bit more as to where High Point and Cam may or may not be in this current time. Now, all of this is unconfirmed from here forward. I gave you the official statement. Now we're talking Stephen. And where I feel that they're at is because the school, this being the first year that universities are able to compensate players directly, I feel that the university isn't able to just willy-nilly cut and go as easy as maybe you would be able to in previous times of the sport. When they were just a student athlete, maybe you let them keep their scholarship until the academic year is over. And as far as the team goes, it's like, well, you're still on scholarship, but you're also not going to be playing for us anymore. And that's it, cut and dry. But now that universities can directly compensate athletes and pay them, and there's still not a large grip of a governing body kind of, we'll say, keeping tabs and keeping regulations and rules linear across the board. This could be different all over the map, but I tend to think that those contracts and those things between a university and a player, they really muddy things up even more. You know, my hunch as we sit right now, if you just had to ask me, is I highly, highly doubt we see Cam in a High Point uniform playing again. That's just me. I'm taking a whack at it. I'm going to say at this point, the last game that he played was at UNC Asheville. We're 3 games beyond that point. I've gotten no inclination yet that he would play against Winthrop. So that would be 4 games in. Well, as I already stated last episode, honestly, for the team's sake at this point, really would probably be better if we did just move on. That's me saying that. Like Cam, love his talent, but dude, at this point, like I said, the season doesn't stop. The dynamic of the team and where their minds are at, and they're looking forward to playing Winthrop, and they just came off of this tough battle on the road against Charleston Southern. I mean, it's not like we can all just say, okay, well, how do we get this guy back into the fold now? And I don't know if he's been practicing. I don't know if he's even been working out. I don't know any of that. I'm going strictly off of games. At UNC Asheville was the last time. So you've had 3 games since then. I'm going to go out and hypothesize likely a fourth that you would have without him. And I'm also going to go out and hypothesize and just say, I don't think we see Cam in a High Point jersey again. And I think that's where the mindset has to be. So at Winthrop, as I said, the depth tested already. It's going to be tested again. And much more so because of Duncombe being really a go-to. Now, there's other players out there like Dalen Berry and some Rozier. I mean, they've got other guys. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that's where that they're going to try to get the ball inside. I would say looking at it themselves, Owen picking up those 2 early fouls just against Charleston Southern. I'm sure they see that and they're like, okay, blood in the water. That's an area that we could go and attack. But that is where we're at. And more as I can, I share at Stephen Beck PS. It is a tough scenario for team, for Cam, I'm sure. Your leading scorer, a very influential and at one point leading rebounder. Those things are going to be tough. But again, because I feel like this is partly where I have to be, and I tried to be this way last season, always pointing other High Point fans to be extremely grateful and appreciative because it's easy to take stuff for granted. Don't take for granted how well this team has still remained on a course for success despite that. How many programs could you remove the most talented player and statistically a top player from a team and then still go out and win 3 games in a row? Oftentimes, I would say that's very unlikely. And if you are in the gambling world, I would say odds makers would look at that and they'd be like, oh, that's not good. There is a lot to be said for the guys still in Panthers uniforms and for the staff still keeping these guys ready and getting the job done, despite all the underswarming of stuff that's probably happening behind scenes and the fact that in games, you're without that type of talent. Like I said, stay tuned to my X page at Stephen Beck PS. I'll give you updates when I can and closer to tip as to whether or not Cam may or may not dress, although I find that highly unlikely as we go forward the rest of this season. Questions, comments, concerns, don't forget we do have an open text line now for all the things that I'm doing, so you can always stay in touch with that. It's 336-347-9807. And when we can, we're going to jump back on Spaces on X at Stephen Beck PS as well. If nothing more, though, catch us the next time on the Proud Panthers podcast.